Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it in front of people, and that's what froze me. We were standing in the lobby of our apartment complex, the kind of place that always smells like Bath and Body Works candles because she buys them in bulk, pretending it makes our home warmer than it actually is. She had a Starbucks cup in her hand, still warm, still fresh, still more alive than anything she'd shown me in months. And when I reached for her waist, the way I used to, she stepped back like my touch was static. Then she laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just detached. And she told her coworker, not even looking at me, that I'd turned predictable, like routine was a flaw she had to apologize for. That word hit harder than anything she'd ever said to my face. Predictable. Meanwhile, the guy she was smiling at in the parking lot lately, the neighbor, the fitness trainer everyone in the complex seemed to know, he was excitement. He was energy. He was nearby. I saw the way his eyes followed her when she passed his building in those work outfits she ordered off Amazon. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't want to believe the shift was real. But something in me went quiet right there in that lobby. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. That moment when you finally understand someone stopped choosing you long before they stopped touching you. She didn't notice my silence. She just kept sipping her coffee and fixing her hair in the lobby mirror, already somewhere else in her head. I went to my shift that afternoon at the warehouse, moving pallets, running the forklift, doing the same physical grind that paid our bills, and her words kept replaying. Predictable. I stocked up at Walmart afterward like I always did, out of habit more than anything, grabbing the same groceries we'd been eating for years. And for the first time, I realized it wasn't routine that bothered her. It was me. The man she used to curl into at night had turned into background noise she could mute whenever she wanted. I got home and found her on the couch, half asleep with Netflix playing something she wasn't watching. I stood there for a moment, waiting for her to notice me, waiting for something. A look, a question, a flicker, nothing. She shifted away when I sat down. Reflex, like my presence inconvenienced the air around her. And I didn't ask for anything. Not intimacy, not conversation, not even acknowledgement. I just let the silence settle between us, heavier than any fight we'd ever had. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix something. I was observing it, watching the cracks she created, watching the way she leaned into her phone when a notification lit up her screen, watching the distance she claimed was exhaustion but never stopped her from lingering outside whenever the neighbor came home from the gym. That night, I said nothing, but something inside me shifted. A quiet that wasn't weakness. A stillness she didn't recognize yet. A silence she would learn to fear. I noticed it the next morning in a place most people would overlook. Not her phone, not her makeup, not even the way she dressed for work. It was the timing, the neighbor's timing. He walked out of his building just as she was heading to her car, the same moment she adjusted her blouse like she wasn't adjusting it for him. I watched from the window, just barely out of sight. She didn't see me. She laughed at something he said, a quiet little laugh she never used with me anymore. He leaned on the railing, casual, easy, like he knew exactly what kind of attention she was starving for. She left for work without glancing back at our apartment, and my silence followed her out the door. When I stepped outside later for my shift, I saw him again near the parking lot. He nodded at me, like we were just neighbors, like he didn't have a reason to keep his distance. It was the kind of nod men give when they think the other guy hasn't figured anything out. But I wasn't angry, not even close. I walked to my truck, the Chevy Silverado I'd kept running through winters and long warehouse nights, and I felt a strange stillness settle in my chest. I wasn't in the fight anymore. I was just watching. At work, I kept my focus, lifting pallets, scanning inventory, moving through the warehouse like muscle memory took over. The guys joked around like usual, but I stayed quiet. Not withdrawn, just elsewhere. Somewhere deeper. And every time I lifted a crate or drove the forklift down the aisle, I replayed that little scene from the morning. The way she smiled up at him. How she shifted her weight toward him. The small things you notice only when you stop begging for attention and start observing the truth. After my shift, I stopped by Walmart for groceries again. Mostly because staying in my routine kept me from overthinking. But even that felt different. I pushed the cart through the aisles, picking up the same things she used to appreciate. Her favorite snacks, her creamer, the The body spray she bought from Bath & Body Works that she said made the apartment feel romantic. Except romance wasn't something we had anymore. Not for months. And suddenly, seeing those things in my cart felt ridiculous. I put most of them back. By the time I got home, she was already there, sitting on the couch with Netflix playing another show she wasn't paying attention to. She looked tired, but not from work. Tired in that distant way people look when they're already giving their energy to someone else. She glanced at me briefly, then back at her phone. A message came in and her whole posture changed. Softer. Lighter. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. I just sat down across the room, not next to her, letting the silence stretch so long she finally felt it. Not enough to speak, but enough to look up, confused for half a second, like she sensed something shifting in the air but couldn't name it. That was the beginning of her losing control. She just didn't know it yet. It started with a notification I wasn't supposed to see. Not because she hid it well, but because she stopped caring if I noticed. She left her phone on the kitchen counter while she changed out of her work clothes. And when the screen lit up, I saw his name. Just a first name, nothing suspicious on its own. But the message preview told a different story. He wrote that he was still thinking about earlier, and that he liked the way she kept glancing back. I didn't touch her phone. I didn't need to read the rest. The truth was loud enough in the pieces she left lying around. She came back into the room in sweatpants, hair tied up, acting tired again. She opened a Bath & Body Works candle like she always did when she wanted to signal that she was done for the night, the same way she'd been signaling for months. That sweet smell was supposed to feel like home. Lately it just smelled like a cover-up. I watched her for a second, not with anger, but with a kind of distant clarity I didn't know I had. She grabbed her phone, saw the message, and smiled faintly at the screen. Not at me. Not even close. And I saw her delete the preview without opening it. Not to hide it, just to save it for later. I went to the bedroom to put away my work clothes, and that was when I noticed the small things I'd been ignoring. The new leggings from Amazon she never wore around me. The perfume she kept in her purse instead of on the dresser. The way her side of the closet looked a little emptier, like she'd been taking pieces of herself elsewhere one by one. Not enough for me to confront her. Just enough for me to understand she had already made a choice. That night she claimed she was exhausted and turned away from me before I even got into bed. The same rehearsal. The same distance. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, realizing it wasn't the sound of someone resting. It was the sound of someone hiding in plain sight. In the morning she left early, saying she needed Starbucks before her shift. She didn't offer a kiss or a touch. She barely offered a look. The door closed behind her, and for the first time, I felt no urge to follow her with questions or hope. Instead, I walked through our apartment slowly, like I was seeing it for the first time. The unmade bed, the half-used candle, the clothes she picked with someone else in mind. And then, tucked under a stack of mail, I found the small proof I didn't expect. A receipt from the gym she never told me she joined, his gym. I held it for a moment, then slipped it back exactly where I found it. I wasn't gathering ammo. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was just watching the truth fall into place, piece by piece, exactly the way she never imagined I would. The day I disappeared didn't begin with a plan. It began with a feeling, one I hadn't let myself acknowledge until that morning. She left before sunrise, moving quietly, almost carefully, like slipping out early gave her plausible innocence. She grabbed her purse, checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, and whispered that she needed Starbucks before her shift. She didn't wait for my response. She didn't expect one. And for once, I didn't offer anything. When the door closed behind her, the apartment fell into a silence I hadn't heard in months. Not tension, not disappointment, just clarity. A kind of cold air that filled the spaces she'd emptied long before I ever thought of leaving. I walked into the kitchen and saw the half-full Bath & Body Works candle she'd left on the counter. She only lit those when she wanted the place to feel like something it wasn't. I blew it out. The smoke curled upward, thin and quiet, disappearing faster than anything she had given me lately. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I didn't shake. I moved slowly, methodically, like my hands knew what to take before I even thought about it. My documents. A few clothes. Work boots. Tools. The small things that belonged to me, not to us. The closet looked different when I packed, like the truth had rearranged everything overnight. Her side was filled with outfits she wore everywhere but home. Mine was practical, untouched, the wardrobe of a man who stopped being seen long before he stopped being wanted. I grabbed 2 duffel bags and set them by the door. Then I stood in the living room for a moment, letting my eyes follow the shape of the life we'd built. The couch where she fell asleep to Netflix instead of to me. The hallway where she checked her phone instead of asking about my day. The kitchen where she smiled at messages that weren't mine. It all made sense now, in the quiet. Every piece of it. And as I looked around, there wasn't anger in me, just decision. I picked up my keys, walked out, and locked the door behind me. The morning air was cool, sharp, honest. The truck was parked where it always was, waiting like it understood before I did. When I started the engine, the sound wasn't dramatic or symbolic. It was simple, clean, final. As I pulled out of the complex, I passed the building where he lived. The neighbor, the trainer, the reason she'd disconnected piece by piece. His blinds were closed. His car was gone, and the space around his door looked lived in a way ours hadn't in a long time. I didn't speed. I didn't look back. I just drove until the apartment complex was gone behind me, swallowed by distance and silence. By the time she returned home, her Starbucks still warm in her hand, all she would find was space, my boots gone, the closet half empty, the quiet I left behind. A quiet she never expected. A quiet that would follow her deeper than any words ever could. I didn't go far. That's the part she'll never understand. She thought disappearing meant running, escaping, breaking away from everything familiar. But I didn't need distance. I needed perspective. I parked the truck just outside the old industrial district near the warehouse, the kind of place where no one looks twice at a parked vehicle. The silence there wasn't lonely. It was clean, honest, a separation without theatrics. I turned off my phone first. Not airplane mode. Not silent. Off. The moment the screen went black, it felt like someone cut the final thread that had been holding me in place. No buzzing. No requests. No attempts to negotiate my worth. Just stillness. I lay the phone on the passenger seat, watching the reflection of the morning sun crawl across the windshield. I wasn't hiding. I was observing, letting her world spin without me for the first time. That afternoon, I drove to the warehouse and picked up an extra shift. Nobody questioned it. Work was easy when your head wasn't drowning in noise. Moving pallets, stacking crates, driving the forklift through the aisles. Everything felt sharper without her weight in my thoughts. I could see my life as it was, not as she needed me to believe it was. On my break, I watched the guys laugh around their phones, scrolling Amazon, showing each other stupid videos. I didn't miss mine. Not even for a second. The silence I carried felt heavier than a conversation, but lighter than a lie. I realized then I'd been carrying her detachment like a burden, pretending it was normal. But without her voice in my ear, I could finally hear myself think again. When my shift ended, I didn't go to any motel or bar. I went to Walmart, walked through the aisles slowly, not buying anything. Just watching regular people live regular lives. Couples arguing quietly about dinner, parents trying to keep track of their kids, older folks reading labels like the world wasn't rushing past them. It grounded me, reminded me that routine wasn't failure. It was stability, something she used to value before she replaced it with a thrill 2 doors down. As the sun started to drop, I parked the truck near a small overlook by the highway. It wasn't a scenic place, just open space and wind. I sat on the tailgate with a bottle of water, letting the quiet stretch out. And in that wide silence, something clicked. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need a confrontation. I didn't need to expose anyone or explain myself. Her unraveling wouldn't come from anything I did. It would come from everything I stopped doing. By the time night settled in, I knew she would be pacing the apartment, calling, texting, checking the window every few minutes. I knew the silence would eat at her faster than any accusation, because silence was something she never prepared for. She prepared for conflict. She prepared for begging. She prepared for explanations. But she had no idea how to handle being left alone with the truth. And I wasn't done watching it unfold. By the 3rd day, her silence wasn't confusion anymore. It was panic. I didn't hear it, obviously. My phone stayed off. But silence has a way of echoing through people, and I could feel the tremors even from a distance. The warehouse guys mentioned she'd been asking around, calling places she thought I might be. Her manager from the mall left me a voicemail on the company line saying she'd shown up late and distracted, the kind of distracted that makes people whisper. I didn't call back. I didn't need to. I spent that morning sitting in the truck on a quiet service road behind the industrial park. The world felt steadier there. No noise, no mirrors, no expectations. I just let the daylight settle over me while I sipped a cheap gas station coffee. It tasted nothing like Starbucks, and maybe that was why I liked it. It didn't pretend to be anything more than what it was. Later, when I finally drove back toward our apartment complex, I kept my distance. I parked near the far end of the lot, behind a row of dumpsters where nobody ever looked. I didn't get out. I didn't plan to. I just watched. Her car was there. The neighbor's car was there too. And she was standing outside with two of her friends from work. The one she always tried to impress with stories about how complicated our marriage was. Except now she wasn't performing. She looked rattled, clutching her phone like a lifeline. One of them touched her shoulder and asked if she was okay. I couldn't hear the words, but her posture told me enough. She shook her head, said something sharp, and the friend's expression changed from sympathy to suspicion. People notice patterns before they know the story behind them. A few minutes later, the neighbor walked out of his building wearing gym clothes, casual and confident like always. He saw her standing there, saw her friends, and for a moment something tightened in his face. He tried to play it cool, nodding at her like everything was normal. But one of her friends stepped back, gave him a look that wasn't friendly, and whispered something to the other. I saw it clearly from the truck, the social shift. The moment the room, or in this case, the courtyard, stopped believing her version of events. She tried to talk to him quietly, but her friends were watching, and so were two neighbors on the stairs pretending to check their mail. She kept glancing around, searching for a place to hide the conversation, but the courtyard had turned into a stage she couldn't control. He shrugged, said something quick, and walked off. No warmth. No inside joke. Just distance. It hit her then. Not the fear of losing him. The fear of being seen. Seen standing alone. Seen without the narrative she built. Seen without me behind her, absorbing impact after impact. She kept looking at the parking lot like she expected my truck to roll in any minute. Like I'd appear with apologies, or explanations, or questions she could twist into reassurances. But the space stayed empty. The world stayed quiet. I watched her rub her forehead, overwhelmed, turning in a slow circle like she was searching for the version of her life that used to make sense. A version that didn't exist anymore. For the first time, the silence wasn't mine. It belonged to her. I didn't plan to stay close, but something about watching her world tilt without me kept me anchored to the shadows of that parking lot. I stayed in the truck until the sun dropped behind the buildings, painting the complex in that dim orange color that makes everything look more honest. People started heading inside with grocery bags from Walmart. Kids ran up the stairs dripping from the pool, and she was still out there, pacing, checking her phone, walking a few steps toward the entrance before turning back. Like she was waiting for a version of me that didn't exist anymore. I finally drove to the far edge of the complex and parked where I had a clean line of sight to our apartment windows. I didn't go inside. I didn't even step out. I just watched the lights flip on one by one. When our living room light came on, she stepped into view, moving like someone who was trying to keep busy just so her thoughts wouldn't catch her. She picked up the Bath and Body Works candle I'd blown out, stared at it for a long moment, then set it aside like she couldn't bring herself to light it. Maybe she didn't want another reminder of the comfort she'd burned through. Eventually, she disappeared into the kitchen, grabbing things, putting them down, picking them up again. This restless, anxious choreography she was never supposed to perform. She wasn't built for uncertainty. She was built for attention, for validation, for the thrill of always having someone orbiting her. Without those things, she didn't know who to be. I watched her check the window every few minutes. Sometimes she'd straighten up like she'd just heard something outside, then sag when nothing happened. She tried calling again, pacing with her phone pressed to her chest the way people hold on to hope when it's slipping through their fingers. But my phone was still off, buried somewhere in the glove box. Silence wasn't just my shield anymore. It was her new gravity. Around 9, she sat on the couch with Netflix playing, just like always. But this time she wasn't pretending to sleep or ignoring me. She wasn't even watching the screen. She was staring past it, unfocused, her leg bouncing as she refreshed her messages over and over. waiting for anything. For me. For him. For someone to choose her. I stayed until the neighbor came home from the gym. He walked across the courtyard slowly, scanning the windows like he already knew she was watching. When he saw her silhouette inside the apartment, he hesitated. He didn't go to her door. He didn't text. He didn't even wave. He just kept walking, head down, like proximity wasn't worth the risk anymore. And that was when I saw her crack. She stood up fast, walked to the window, and pressed her hand against the glass like she could pull him back with a gesture. But he didn't turn around. Not once. Not even for a second. The distance I'd created had become contagious. I leaned back in the truck seat, letting the quiet close around me. The same quiet she'd used to push me out of our home was now pulling her deeper into her own isolation. I wasn't gone to punish her. I wasn't gone to expose anything. I wasn't even gone to win. I was gone because stepping away was the only way to see who she really was, and who I had become. And from the look on her face in that window, she finally understood the truth. She hadn't lost a man who needed her. She'd lost a man who stopped needing anything from her at all. She found me on the 5th night, though she didn't realize it at first. I'd parked the truck near the back exit of the complex, far from the main courtyard, where the dumpsters cast long shadows across the pavement. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't revealing anything before I was ready. The silence had to do the work, and it was doing it well. I saw her before she saw me. She walked out of the building fast, her movements tight and unfocused, the kind of rushed steps people take when they're running from their own thoughts. She kept glancing at her phone, like refreshing the screen would change something. She wasn't crying. She wasn't that kind of person. But her face had a stiffness I'd never seen on her before, like every muscle was fighting to hold itself together. She stopped near the row of trash cans, breathing hard, pressing her palm against her forehead. She looked around the empty lot, expecting me to appear from some corner, expecting the old version of me, the one who chased her mood swings, tried to fix the unfixable, begged for clarity she never intended to give. But all she found was the night and the hum of distant traffic. I watched her sink down onto the curb, elbows on her knees, fingers gripping her phone. She opened Netflix for a second, maybe out of habit, maybe hoping it would distract her, but closed it immediately. I could almost feel the panic radiating off her. She wasn't used to being alone with herself. She wasn't used to silence that didn't obey her. After a while, she stood up and slowly walked toward the corner where my truck sat hidden in the shadow. She stopped about 20 feet away, like she sensed something but couldn't see it clearly. She whispered something under her breath, just a few words, but her voice cracked, and that crack told me everything. Her confidence was gone. Her script was broken. She didn't know what part she was supposed to play anymore. She finally turned to go back inside, shoulders slumped, moving like she'd aged 10 years in 1 week. And that was the moment I stepped out of the truck. I didn't walk toward her fast. I didn't call her name. I didn't demand anything. I just closed the door behind me quietly, letting the sound travel across the lot. She froze mid-step. Her back stiffened. She turned slowly, like she was afraid the silence had taken shape behind her. Our eyes met, and I saw everything at once. Her guilt, her fear, her confusion, her longing. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. Her lips trembled slightly, the only sign she was breaking. I didn't fill the silence for her. I didn't rescue her from the moment. I just stood there with a calm she couldn't touch, couldn't predict, couldn't control. For the first time since all of this began, she was the vulnerable one, the exposed one, the one battling for ground. And I was exactly where I needed to be, present, silent, unshaken. A man she could no longer read. A man she could no longer manipulate. A man she suddenly realized she might lose for real. She stood there in the middle of that empty lot, frozen in place, as if the night itself were holding her still. When I finally stepped into the thin spill of light from the back entrance, she took a small, involuntary step toward me, then stopped, realizing she no longer knew what she was allowed to do. The power shift wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, steady, undeniable, and it was written all over her face. She tried to speak again, but whatever words she thought she had prepared disappeared. Her shoulders sank. She swallowed hard. Her eyes searched mine for some sign of the man she remembered, the one who bent, softened, compromised. But that version of me had burned off in the silence. What stood in front of her was the man I was long before she drifted away. Only sharper now. less reachable. She finally managed to say something small, something tentative, something that was supposed to pull me back into orbit. I didn't respond. I let the stillness settle again, that heavy quiet she'd never learned how to navigate. She looked down at her hands, then at the pavement, then at the building behind her, anywhere but at the truth. When I did speak, it wasn't a speech. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't a question. It was a simple acknowledgement of presence, nothing more. And the way she reacted told me she'd been bracing for shouting, for betrayal, for evidence, for confrontation. But the calm hit harder. She wasn't prepared for a man who didn't need answers anymore. She stepped closer, almost cautiously. Her voice cracked when she told me she'd been worried, that she'd been calling, that she didn't understand what was happening. She said it like she expected me to apologize for the quiet, to explain it, to make it easier for her. But I didn't offer her the comfort she was reaching for. I let her sit in that discomfort, let her feel the absence she created long before I drove away. She reached out, just slightly, fingers hovering near my arm, but stopped before making contact. It was instinct, maybe, muscle memory, but even she seemed to know she'd lost the right to reach me without invitation. And for a moment she just stood there, breathing unevenly, looking at me like she was finally seeing the damage she never believed she caused. Not because I told her, not because I showed her proof, but because the silence forced her to face the version of herself she tried to hide. Behind her, the apartment lights flickered as neighbors moved around. Someone walked out carrying a bag from Walmart. Another man let his dog out near the grass. Life continued, indifferent, but the space between us had turned into something raw and painfully private. She whispered that she wanted to talk, that we needed to talk, that she didn't know how things got this far. And those words, those suddenly urgent attempts at repair, triggered something in her face. A flash, a realization. The quiet had changed me, and it had changed her too, but in a way she didn't expect. For the first time since the beginning of her drift, she understood she wasn't choosing between two men anymore. She was fighting not to lose the only one who ever really chose her with intention. She didn't follow me right away when I turned toward the open lot. She hesitated, like crossing those few steps meant crossing into a truth she wasn't ready to face. I kept walking, slow, steady, letting the night settle between us. I didn't leave. I just let distance choose its own shape. When she finally started moving, her steps were uneven, her breath shaky in a way I'd never heard from her. Not even during arguments. This wasn't anger. This was collapse. I stopped near the edge of the lot where the streetlight hummed softly, flickering like it couldn't decide whether to stay lit. She approached carefully, hands clenched at her sides, trying to hold her composure together. In the faint glow, she looked smaller, stripped of the confidence she wrapped herself in at work, stripped of the flirtatious spark she carried around the neighbor, stripped of the coldness she used to freeze me out of our home. She asked again if we could talk. Her voice wasn't sharp now. It was thin, fragile, carrying the weight of someone who finally realized she had run out of versions to hide behind. I didn't answer immediately. I just stood there, letting the quiet settle between us the same way she used it to push me away for months. Only now, the silence wasn't rejection. It was boundary. It was definition. It was the space where I chose myself first. She started explaining without being asked. Words tripped over each other, about stress, about confusion, about how she never meant for things to go that far. Hearing her try to build a bridge out of excuses felt distant, unreal, like watching someone try to glue together shattered glass with their bare hands. She kept searching my face for anger or forgiveness, anything she could work with. But I didn't give her either. I let her speak because the collapse needed to run its course. When she faltered, she admitted she had made mistakes. The words weren't elegant. They weren't rehearsed. They were raw, trembling, squeezed out through pride breaking down. She said she noticed the neighbor pulling away. She noticed her friends looking at her differently. She noticed how small the apartment felt without me in it. And somewhere in that unraveling, she realized she had pushed away the one person who actually chose her without conditions. I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't step forward. I didn't try to rescue her from the truth. I simply breathed in the cool night air and let her see that my silence wasn't punishment. It was self-respect. When I finally spoke, it wasn't with softness or bitterness, just clarity. I told her I wasn't coming back to the version of us she broke. If she wanted anything with me now, it had to be rebuilt from the ground up, on honesty, effort, reciprocity. Real reciprocity, not convenience, not routine, not proximity. She listened like every word was a lifeline pulled taut between us. She nodded slowly, tears gathering but not falling, as if letting them drop would make everything too real. She said she understood, and for the first time, I believed she did. I didn't promise her a clean slate. I didn't promise her forever. I didn't even promise her forgiveness. I promised her one thing, a chance, a new beginning, but on my terms this time. When she stepped closer, not reaching, just existing beside me in the quiet, something in her posture shifted. Not victory, not relief. Acceptance. The night was still, heavy, quiet. But this time, the silence wasn't a weapon. It was an understanding. I didn't walk away. I didn't take her hand either. I let the space speak for us. Two people standing in the ruins of what she broke, ready to build only if she could finally match the weight of what I'd always carried. A beginning not granted by emotion, but by clarity. A chance earned, not given. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.